All right, buckle up because this deep dive is going to be a wild one. We're jumping into the world of Sonny Jetson and their book, I've Been to Venus and Back. These are real feelings. Let the universe guide your heart through space.
And just to prepare you, that title is really just the tip of the iceberg. This book is something else.
No kidding, it's not your typical self-help book.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Not even in the same galaxy, really. It's more like Jetson just took everything in their head, all their experiences, emotions, rants, everything, and just poured it onto the page.
Chord is the perfect word for it, because it's not a story, really, not in the usual way.
Right, more like a stream of consciousness jumping all over the place, from these crazy, vivid descriptions to these deep spiritual insights, and the way it's written, all the weird punctuation and bolding. It's like you can practically hear Jetson's voice.
It's almost like they're in the room with you, yelling sometimes. It definitely grabs your attention, and one thing you notice right away is just how brutally honest it is.
Yeah, it's almost uncomfortable how open Jetson is about everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. Nothing is off limits. Which brings us to one of the biggest themes in the book, love.
But we're not talking about your typical Valentine's Day kind of love, are we?
Definitely not. Jetson sees love as this massive universal force, this energy that connects everything. It's in those passionate moments, yeah, but it's also in the heartbreak, the loss, the vulnerability of it all.
And Jetson doesn't shy away from any of it. You'll be reading about this incredibly intense, passionate encounter, and whoa, they do not hold back on the details, and then bam, you're hit with this gut-wrenching description of betrayal or loss.
Like Jetson's trying to show us that real love, the powerful kind, includes all of it, the highest highs and the lowest lows, the light and the dark. And when you accept all of that, that's when you tap into something truly profound.
Speaking of profound, Jetson talks a lot about consciousness and awareness, too. And they have this thing about capitalizing the word mind like it's a separate entity that can really mess with us.
It's like this idea that your mind, with all its thoughts and worries, can actually stop you from experiencing the present moment.
Which is where that phrase Jetson uses all the time. It is what it is comes in. It's like a mantra, a reminder to stop trying to control everything and just accept what is.
Which, let's be honest, is way easier said than done, especially these days with how distracting everything is.
And Jetson knows it. There are parts in the book, these incredible rants about how society is structured, about materialism, about all the people in charge. It's like they're taking on the whole system.
Oh, yeah. No holding back when it comes to Jetson's social commentary. It's this raw, unfiltered anger at the way things are, the inequality, the way we're destroying the planet, the abuse of power.
There's this one part I can't get out of my head.
Yeah.
Jetson's describing this beautiful sunset over the ocean. You can practically feel how peaceful it is. And then, boom, they just launch into this whole thing about corporate greed and politicians being corrupt.
That's what I love about the book, those unexpected shifts. You're forced to confront these harsh realities right alongside these beautiful, transcendent moments.
Maybe that's the point. To show us that it's all connected, the good, the bad, the personal, the political. But before we get too deep into the social commentary, we've got to talk about Jetson's spiritual side. Because this book is overflowing with references to Eastern philosophies, Sufi mysticism, psychedelic experiences even.
It's like Jetson went on this wild spiritual buffet line, trying a little bit of everything, and then blended it all together into their own unique blend.
And this is where things get even wilder, because Jetson doesn't hold back about their experiences with psychedelics. It's clear that those experiences had a huge impact on how they see the world.
You'll be reading along, and then suddenly you're hit with phrases like Kundalini power ray or descriptions of colors leaping out of people's heads, and then bam, the next sentence. Jetson drops this incredibly profound insight about consciousness, or what reality even is.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure. But it keeps you on the edge of your seat. You never know what's coming next.
It's important to remember, though, that this is just one person's experience, their unique way of seeing things.
Absolutely. But even within that, there are these universal truths about love, loss, and searching for meaning that I think everyone can connect with.
And that's what we're going to keep unpacking as we dive deeper into Jetson's world. What does it mean to really live consciously in a world full of distractions? How can we find that universal love that Jetson's always talking about?
One thing that really struck me about this book is how Jetson uses travel like a metaphor for exploring not just the world, but also themselves.
Totally. Like they're always on the move, both physically and spiritually. You'll be reading about their trips to India, Cambodia, Thailand, all these vibrant, exotic places, and it's all woven in with these reflections on their own personal growth and their search for truth.
And those descriptions, so vivid. Like that part where Jetson talks about Anjuna, Goa,
Oh, tell me you remember the line.
incredible India. If you could put up with a lot of shit, you'll like it. Something like that.
That's so Jetson Blunt funny, but also kind of deep when you think about it, because it's like they're saying you got to embrace the whole experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, even the shitty parts.
Exactly. And that idea of embracing discomfort, it comes up again and again in the book. There's that one line that really gets me. Going through hell to be free. It suggests that sometimes the toughest experiences are the ones that actually liberate us.
It's a powerful message. And it's something you don't hear from most self-help gurus. They're not afraid to talk about the darkness, the pain, the struggles that are just part of being human.
Totally. And Jetson's not afraid to name names either when it comes to who they think is responsible for a lot of that suffering.
Hmm.
We talked about Jetson's social commentary earlier, but they really go there calling out some of the most powerful people and institutions in the world.
It's interesting, though, because it doesn't feel like they're pushing conspiracy theories or anything. It's more like they're stating facts, weaving them in with their own experiences and what they've observed.
Yeah, like that part where they're talking about the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Windsors, and they just come right out and say, these are the folks who are pulling the strings.
And whether you agree with Jetson's conclusions or not, you have to admire their willingness to speak truth to power, to challenge the way things are, to point out the injustice and inequality that so often gets ignored.
For sure. And that same fearlessness comes through when Jetson talks about war and violence. There's some really tough descriptions of the horrors of conflict, the way it destroys individuals and communities.
And they don't shy away from the historical context either, bringing up things like the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the massacre at Wounded Knee, the Vietnam War, all these examples of how violence just seems to create more violence and how the people in charge often keep those cycles going for their own benefit.
And just when you think Jetson's about to go totally dark on us, they hit you with this unexpected humor, this playfulness that kind of lightens the mood. It reminds you that even when things are really bad, there's still room for joy, for laughter, for a little absurdity even.
That bit about Easter gets me every time. You know the one, does anyone really think that bunny rabbits and Easter eggs have anything to do with the crucifixion? Classic Jetson unexpected, a little irreverent, but it makes you think.
It does. It makes you question everything.
Hmm.
Not just accept what you've always been told, but dig deeper, explore different perspectives. Be open to the possibility that maybe what you think you know isn't the whole story.
And that constant questioning, that refusal to be put in a box by dogma or convention, that's what makes Jetson's work so refreshing and ultimately so liberating.
I totally agree. It's like they're giving us permission to question, to think for ourselves, to find our own way. And that leads us to another big theme in the book: personal freedom.
Yes, and Jetson seems to be saying that real freedom doesn't come from achieving things or having a lot of stuff. It comes from something deeper inside, from cultivating awareness, from connecting to something bigger than yourself.
And maybe even from embracing the things we usually try to avoid: pain, discomfort, uncertainty. There's a line that really sums this up. Heaven is in loving your pain, making you smile.
Wow, that's powerful. It speaks to the idea that we can find transformation and even joy in the midst of suffering if we can just learn to accept it.
It's a challenging concept, no doubt, but it's one that I think really resonates with anyone who's ever grappled with the big questions in life, the search for meaning and purpose. And speaking of big questions, Jetson asks a really interesting one towards the end of the book. Who is this I who doesn't want to know?
That question goes straight to the core of who we are, our sense of self. Who are we really beyond the roles we play, the things we believe, the stories we tell ourselves?
It's not a question you can answer with a simple definition. It's something you have to explore deeply within yourself. And it's a journey that Jetson invites us all to take.
Because maybe in the process of exploring that question, of peeling back all the layers of conditioning and what society tells us to think, we might just discover something deeper about ourselves, about our place in the universe, about the nature of existence itself.
And maybe, just maybe, in that process of self-discovery, we'll find the freedom that Jetson's talking about. The freedom that comes from embracing every part of who we are, shadows and all. You know, it's one thing to talk about, like, finding freedom through discomfort. But Jetson actually walked the walk. The book is full of these intense, challenging experiences, heartbreak, questioning everything. But through it all, there's this, like, undercurrent of joy, of liberation.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, look, life is messy, it's painful sometimes, but that's where the real beauty is. The depth, you won't find it in just being comfortable all the time.
And you can feel that in their writing, too. So raw, so vulnerable, almost all over the place sometimes. But that's what makes it so real, so honest. Like how Jetson writes about love. It's not always romantic or pretty. There's jealousy, possessiveness. that gut-wrenching pain of heartbreak.
And yet, even with all of that, there's this unwavering belief in the power of love. The power to transform us, to connect us, to heal. Remember that line, love is what you are. It's so short, but man, it's deep.
It's like Jetson's reminding us that love isn't just something we feel, it's who we are at our core, and it goes way beyond just romantic love.
Exactly. Jetson talks about this open love, this huge, all-encompassing love that goes beyond any kind of boundaries. It's about celebrating that we're all connected, humans, animals, everything.
It's a pretty powerful vision, that even with all the craziness and suffering in the world, there's this thread of love running through it all, connecting us.
It might sound kind of idealistic, especially these days, but I think that's what makes Jetson's perspective so important. They're not pretending everything's perfect, but they're reminding us that there's always hope.
Because deep down, we all have the potential to change, to grow, to find freedom, even when things are tough.
And sometimes those tough experiences, those hells we go through, they're the only way to get to that freedom.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Sonny Jetson and their, well, unique perspective, let's end with this thought. Jetson writes, "You go through hell to be free." What does that mean to you? Where hells might you need to walk through? What would you be willing to face to find your own version of freedom and maybe even a deeper sense of joy? Thanks for coming along for the ride, and until next time, keep diving deep.